Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Alder Hour, your favorite day to end your working day. I'm Matt Alder, the host of Recruiting Future podcast and also the host of the Alder Hour. This show is part of the Purple Acorn Network. Head over to purpleacornnetwork.com after the show. If you want to learn more about some of the other great shows that are on the network, you can make sure you follow Purple Acorn on LinkedIn. Then you don't miss out on any of the content. So it's a really good idea to do that. In fact, do it right now. And also, this episode is available as a podcast wherever you listen to your podcast. Now, we are live, unless you're watching this as a recording, but we are live. So please make some comments, interact with us. We will try our best to read them out and make you part of the show. And we've got some really great topics this week and a really interesting guest. So really looking forward to seeing what you have to say. Without further ado, can I invite my amazing co-hosts to the screen and let's get on with it. Hi, Rona. Hi, Jocelyn. How are you doing?
Hi.
Hey, doing pretty well. Thanks, Matt.
Excellent. Well, I wasn't here last week because I was down in London talking about AI. I don't know why that's different to any other day. All I seem to do is talk about AI at the moment. But I was talking to AI at the RL 100 Enterprise Day, which was fascinating. Some great conversations down there. What's everyone been up to? Justin, what have you been up to? And where are you? Where are you in the world now? You've got your traveling background on.
Yeah, so actually, I was just on vacation for 10 days in El Salvador, which was incredible. I spent some time, a few years there as a kid, and wanted to take my husband back to where I'd grown up. So it was really fun, super gorgeous. It's a country that is small, but has, the mountains, the jungle, the lake, the beach, and the people there are so friendly. So just got back into town and am currently traveling. I'm in Orlando at the moment.
Cool. Going from like hot place to hot place. Rona, what about you? What have you been up to?
I have been here. Actually, I haven't traveled in the past couple of weeks, but that's going to change at the end of this week. But yeah, been here. We did the show last week with John Baldino, which was super fun.
Thank you for being a brilliant host as ever, and thank you, John, for stepping in. Yeah, fantastic. So cool. So what did you have for us this afternoon? Rona, what's your segment about?
Is ChatGPT replacing our brain? Is it making us stupider?
I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Jocelyn, what about you?
Yeah, so I'm talking about a situation going on right now in India. There's a lot of work on how to engage and attract, engage, and retain the Gen Z workforce. So more to come on that, but really exciting to talk about.
Fantastic. Looking forward to talking about both of those. Before we do, though, let's move on to our first bit, which is Points and Pints. Okay, so those of you not familiar with the show, at this point, we all, mostly all of us bring a drink along, normally kind of related to alcohol or non-alcoholic version of alcohol, and we have a drink and we discuss what's in the news, things that we've seen in the news this week. Now, for the third show running, I am still drinking Lucky Saint lemon and lager, non-alcoholic lemon and lager, because we've proved that I cannot do this show if I drink alcohol. And I hated this when I first had it, but now I quite like it. It's my drink of the summer. Rona, do you have a beverage with you?
Yes, I have the new Trader Joe's brewed ginger beer. It's non-alcoholic, but everyone on TikTok says it's amazing, so I'll find out soon.
Absolutely. Jocelyn, have you got anything for us?
I do. I actually am the alcoholic out of the group because my drink has alcohol in it. It is, you can barely see it here with my travel background, but it is an Orange Blossom Pilsner here in Florida, and it's absolutely delicious.
Very nice. I'm very jealous, actually. Right, let's just open this, see if it tastes the same as it did the other week. I really hated this when I first had it, but actually, it's growing on me. I might have to buy another. I think this is the last one. I might have to buy another box. Right. Okay. Mm, that's really good. It's really good. Thoroughly recommended. I'm not sure you can get it in the States, but you can certainly get it in Europe. How's the TikTok recommendation?
It's really good, actually. It's really,
The,
really good.
you see the collective wisdom of TikTok is never wrong. Okay, cool. Right, let's go on to our first article. Right, AI might take your job. Here are 22 new ones it could give you. So, it's an article in the New York Times. I was initially quite annoyed when I opened it up because I wanted a nice list of 22 jobs. And then I realized I'm just trying to dumb down the New York Times. So this was a long form article. And actually, it was really interesting because I think a lot of these articles about, alternative AI jobs are just lists of fairly random things. But in this case, the author kind of put them into themes, and I'm interested to see if we think that these themes are kind of applicable to what we do. So the first theme was trust, which is all about compliance and accountability. So it was the role that humans play in an AI driven world. The second one was integration, which is all about technology and getting bits of tech to work together, integrating all those AI things, which is, I suppose, a fairly obvious one. The third one was fascinating because it was taste. And the idea of this is that if AI is driving everything and creating everything and doing everything, then we end up in a very kind of homogenous world where everything is the same. So the idea of these kind of taste roles is basically creative designer roles, really kind of architect what it is that we want AI to take us to. And one of the examples was a human resources designer, which I'm not sure is the final name that job will have. But it was about actually shaping the way that the AI kind of works on processes and all that, and communications to actually define a culture and drive differentiation. So I thought there was some sort of really interesting stuff in there. Thinking about what AI can't do at the moment, or what some of the dangers of it are, and sort of planning jobs in around that. Jocelyn, what do you think? Do you think there's a future in the human resources designer? Where are you on this one?
Yeah, I think there definitely is, because the article talks about you know, leveraging AI to design workplace culture and training, and particularly on the culture side, as you've kind of mentioned, right, where everything could be homogenous in the event that everybody was using AI. You can't just all have the same culture or have a culture that is not being maintained by somebody. So I could absolutely see that being a role that we will need in the future.
Absolutely. And Rona, what did you think?
Yeah, I definitely think that's a role that we need. I don't know if the name's gonna be the same. It's very similar to other. I don't know. I was also intrigued by the AI human evaluation specialist role that they had under integration, which was a role for an expert to determine like the optimal combination of AI and humans for specific tasks. I see that one as very like HR slash TA people could easily move into that one as long as they like prepare on the AI side of things. But it's kind of like
Mhm.
the way I saw it was kind of like org design slash skills assess like resourcing of people internally. I think that's an interesting role.
That is really interesting. And actually, one of the conversations I had at the event I was at last week, which will have to remain anonymous because this person did not give me permission, specifically told me not to talk about it anywhere in public. But that organization's done a lot of data science backed work to actually find the moments specifically in the hiring process where humans are absolutely optimal, where you can't replace a human. It was very bespoke to them as well, which was quite interesting, and bits of it were quite surprising, but it's kind of, I think that's really interesting because I think that the trouble is we can make massive assumptions about what AI can do and what humans can do, and actually, I think it needs some like detailed work and research and study to actually do that and kind of move beyond the assumptions. Because, as we've said before, people bring a lot of bias to this in terms of wanting to keep their favorite part of their job and all of that kind of stuff. Was there anything else in there? Anything that surprised you, or anything that wasn't in there that you think could be a job for the future?
No, I think the jobs that were there were pretty, it was a pretty good list. Nothing really surprised me. I don't know, Jocelyn, what do you think?
I mean, there were definitely things that I'd never considered that were part of the list that I thought were super interesting, like an AI plumber, for example, where they're troubleshooting AI workflows and agentic systems. That's really interesting because that is a job that still requires a lot of physical work from an individual, but to figure out how to then again create this hybrid between that human role and the AI role at play is interesting, and kind of just goes back to your thought, Rona, about uh, what will be so important is figuring out how much of the work is going to be driven by AI and how much of it is going to be driven by human. And I think we'll also see, you know, you mentioned kind of org effectiveness or org development, but also change management in all of that too. And um, I, having that background myself, I'm super, super interested to see what actually happens with it. So this was a really exciting list.
Yeah, no, 100%. So, after my initial skepticism of its format, it was a really interesting article. So let's move on to the next one. Okay. Fake candidates, how to identify and block them. So this is a really hot topic at the moment, and people seem to be sort of bringing examples to the table all of the time. Basically, this isn't about sort of candidates cheating. This is actually about fraud and fake candidates. So people using fake AI resumes, stealing people's identities, using proxy interviews, which is kind of a bit old school, really. It's like there's no sort of, that's been going on for quite some time, and also deep fakes, which is the one that tends to get the most kind of the most kind of attention. And really, this is about fraud, it's about cybersecurity, huge risks to organizations. I mean, just on the cybersecurity front, I don't think this was caused by a fake job application, but one of the biggest retailers in Britain has just lost $400 million from a cyber attack that took its website offline for 3 months. So the which they haven't quite tracked down exactly how it happened, but the the implications of these are kind of enormous. So that's kind of what the article is about. It sort of talks about some ways that you can prevent sort of fraudulent fake candidates. Justin, what did you think? And what is the kind of the real danger of this at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, as you've said, I think the three areas that, or maybe even four areas that we really need to consider are going to be the financial losses aspect, as you've mentioned. Something that I found to be really interesting was reputation damage. And of course, kind of coming from that HR and employment law background, team disruption and legal exposure are two other really big things in there. And I think to myself, especially from a team disruption perspective, how difficult that is and will continue to be for those that are running recruitment teams, because you work so hard on a rec. um, it's celebrated when you fill the rec and you close it. It's a big deal, and so for that to be taken away from a recruiter just creates morale issues across
Mm,
the board, and
mm.
I think could be quite detrimental to the spirit of the talent acquisition community.
Yeah, no, 100%. I hadn't even thought of it from that angle. Rona, what do you think? Have you seen the fake and fraudulent candidates in your work? Is it something that's increasing?
I haven't seen it, but a lot of the people that I work with, a lot of my clients, they definitely are seeing this because most of my clients are in tech. So this is, I mean, it's just we went from the like, outsourcing of jobs that people used to do and like sittings for interviews to now being able to do it with AI. I think what I always caution people every time I talk about this topic is yes, it's happening, it exists. We need to be very mindful of the ways that we go about identifying these candidates because a lot of what I hear is a lot of bias. It's like, oh well, if the person doesn't have this type of name or if they live here, it's like, ooh, we're
Mm.
going back decades of the work that we've done for inclusion, for diversity, just equity in general in hiring. So I think that's something to be mindful. What really stood out about this article is like when they were listing out like the ways why candidates submit fake applications, they talked about scams and corporate espionage, and I was like, ooh, yes,
Yes, that's something
this
that's
is a
very much
way.
in the news in our sector at the moment,
Yes,
isn't it?
we definitely know what we're all thinking about right
Yeah.
now. But it's like, ooh, is this going to be an easier way for that to be done? Because that's going to be a huge problem. And like that has direct financial impact. And also, Jocelyn, I hadn't thought about it the way that you said about the like morale of TA professional. But yeah, thinking of it as a recruiter, you go through your rack, you're so happy you finally closed it, and then at that point you find out that it wasn't even a person. Ooh. So there are lots of HR tech vendors coming up with ways to identify this. There's some that have been announced recently. I just really hope that we don't take the bias route or the inaccessible to everyone route to do this, because that's not the point.
Yeah, I mean, in the article it mentions using AI technology to kind of spot this, background checks, different types of interviews and recruiter training. Justin, what do you think? How can companies stop this happening?
Uh, if I could give a real answer to that,
Yeah.
you know how much money I would make. um, but in all seriousness, I think that um, what we really need to be doing is actually leveraging the tools that are available to us in this AI driven world to help us identify when there might be fraud that's occurring. And then, as you said too, the training aspect I think is incredibly important as well, particularly on the front lines, like with that TA team. How can you train them on ways to identify certain patterns in a resume, as an example, to try and combat some of these issues? So, you know, we'll see. I'm sure this is a really great opportunity for tech startups to get involved. And then there's some bigger players out there that are trying to do it too. But I find it to be super fascinating, and it's funny because Matt, when I read the article, I was like, why would someone create fake candidates? I literally on ChatGPT, I'll admit to the world, was kind of dumb because I searched like, why would someone create fake candidates for this? Because I just couldn't understand why this would happen. And so it was, ChatGPT was super helpful and gracious to me with my dumb question, and gave me a lot of really great information. But one of them, and Rona spoke to it a little bit, was the cybersecurity aspect. And
Yeah.
again, reputational damage that we mentioned earlier, along with, all of the compliance aspects associated to it as well. So very scary times, but we'll see what we come up with.
Absolutely. So it's quite the situation. So let's go to the situation room. So, Jocelyn, what do you have for us?
Yeah, so is a really interesting article that I found. So the situation here is that in India, they're looking to, as the title says, reinvent the HR playbook. And what they're trying to do is figure out how they can track, engage, and retain, particularly the Gen Z population, which is now becoming more and more part of our workforce. And the way that Gen Z, what they expect out of a job is very different than perhaps other generations might have. It isn't just this one size fits all mentality anymore. It's a very personalized approach to the way that you attract, engage, and retain these employees. And so there was a lot of really interesting stuff in this article that I thought to share. New strategies that they'd brought up that you can kind of take action on right away if you feel like it's something that makes sense for your organization. One of them is this idea of instant recognition and peer validation. So, for example, EY launched, it's called the Extraordinary You platform. And what it does is it enables real time shout outs that can go live within 24 hours, but it can even be shared on social media as well, which was kind of cool. So you get that instant gratification. Another thing, and I think this is so important, is training managers, leaders on Gen Z friendly leadership, essentially. So, again, companies like EY who are at the forefront of this, or Experian Technologies, what they're doing is they're actually working with their managers on coaching them about Gen Z's digital habits, their communication style, and something that I thought was really interesting and quite compelling, the desire for co creation.
Oh, cool.
Another was
Mm.
reimagining boundaries and flexible benefits. They talked a lot about, how can we take a look at a more high level approach to leave policies like elderly care leave, for example, or on the wellness side, how can we make sure that there's good work life balance? So, one of the ideas there was implementing silent hours, like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m., to better support the work life balance. There were two others that I thought were super interesting as well. One was well-being tools. So Accenture uses this app called Nudge, and that helps Gen Z track expenses. It helps them save, manage, student loan repayments, and it just offers really user-friendly advice. And then the last piece that I thought was incredibly important was AI powered career planning.
Mm.
So Accenture also uses the I Aspire platform. And what it does is, and I think this is so cool, it actually lets employees visualize career paths. It helps them connect with mentors, and it actually also assists in pursuing personalized learning. And that's kind of the theme throughout it all, is that personalized experience for the employee.
Yeah, I think that's all fabulous stuff, and I suppose a couple of things that I'd add to that. I think from the co-creation bit is really interesting because I was kind of reading something about learning and development, the future of learning and development, and actually we're talking about a very incredibly connected generation that gets all its information from TikTok, from short form videos and things like that, and how that is kind of actually redefining, how training works in terms of how people kind of get that information.
Yeah, I absolutely. And, ultimately, this article, when we look at the grand scheme of things, what we're seeing is that this generational shift, which is becoming more of a strategic move for employers. So it's moving from that rigid, as I mentioned, one size fits all policies to this more personalized, more values driven, more kind of employee eccentric experience for that individual employee. So, really what they're asking for the Gen Z population from their employers is a more responsive leadership, which kind of ties back to the training piece, right? More agile workplace models. So, better understanding of what their career paths might look like and how to get there, and what type of personalized training can be put in place to do that. Recognition. So, recognition kind of tied to efforts and impact, the financial and emotional wellness support that I mentioned, and then opportunities. And I think this is really key from the article, opportunities to grow and contribute in meaningful ways. So, what the article finishes off with is that these aren't just, you know, evolving expectations that an employer could consider implementing. Uh, it's going to be essential to retaining talent, driving engagement, and staying competitive in the talent process as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think you only have to look at the demographics of this to see the importance of it. And it's kind of really interesting because there is, I mean, certainly in the UK, there is sometimes some cynicism about generational stereotypes and all this sort of stuff. And I've seen some kind of quite, I don't know what the word I would use, but some let's use cynical conversations from HR professionals in large organizations, saying that actually all of this stuff is giving Gen Z fake expectations about work and it's bad career advice and all that kind of thing. And it always strikes me that people don't really see the change that's coming. And I think one of the I was in a room once where someone was giving a presentation about Gen Z traits and all these kind of things, and listing all of the world events that they'd been subject to. And Gen Xer put their hand up and went, "Well, hang on a minute, we lived through all of this and all of this." And the presenter made a stunning point, which is these are people who've grown up with unfettered access to the world's news. It's there, it's coming from their phone all the time. So, there's no kind of hiding from it. So it is a very, very different thing. Do you see that kind of cynicism sometimes from HR professionals?
Um, sure. I mean, you're going to see, that anywhere. I think more than anything, people, or I'd like to think anyway, that they'd be quite excited about these new opportunities for introducing new strategies. What will be really important is that you don't just go for the sexy stuff. When we talk about personalization, it needs to work for your organization as well. And again, that theme of personalization, it's not a one size fits all approach. So if you're doing this for your Gen Z workforce, it might not be great for your Gen X workforce. And
Mm.
so, how do you handle that when you have this multi generational workforce that have different expectations from their employers?
Absolutely, I think that is now, what are we now? 4 generations in the workplace, something like that. It's never really happened before, and the 5th one is on the way. So there's only a few years to go before Gen Alpha starts hitting the workforce, and then yeah, who knows what's going to happen. Jocelyn, thank you very much for all of that stuff, and let's move on to our guest. Hi, Walter. How are you?
Hi, Matt. Very good. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. So, could you just introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
Sure. I head up recruiting. I'm the chief talent officer at a company called Venture Employer Solutions and all of their other companies around the world.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit more about what the company does.
Yeah, sure. So Venture is the second largest HR outsourcing company in the world. We play in the same sandbox as ADP and Paychex, and we're the largest private organization in the space. As well, we have an international staffing firm called Salvo Global. We're in 30 countries, 40,000 employees. And I have the honor and pleasure to help everyone in the company with recruiting, hiring, retention, and all that comes with it.
Fantastic. And I want to dig into that in a second. But before we do, you've got a really interesting background in terms of what you did before you kind of moved into recruiting. Just to tell everyone what you used to do.
All right. I don't know if it's that interesting, but I am a failed tennis playing professional. Um, I grew up playing junior tennis in high school and then college, and then I played professional tournaments. And to be honest with you, Matt, at some point, I realized that I was not making enough money to support myself, my family with playing tennis. So I had to get into the business community.
Fantastic. And the reason I asked you for that is the reason I asked you that is I'm really interested in terms of almost the transferable lessons. What did you take from pro tennis and be able to kind of move into recruitment? Because I think there is so much that recruiting can learn from pro sports. I was just really interested in your take on that.
That's a great question. I mean, the very first thing that comes to mind is short term memory. Growing up as a recruiter and, learning the basics of making the greatest hire you've ever made, thinking you're the superstar of superstars, or conversely, when you think you did everything right and it turns into just a miserable situation, taking the counter offer, not even showing up for the interview, maybe. You got to move on. You're
Right.
never as good as you think you are. You're never as bad as you think you are. And it's the in my mind the tennis that taught me you play one point as hard as best you can, and no matter what happens, you got to move on to the next one. So I mean that and concentration and a lot of times recruiters, recruiting professionals, they had a bad day at home. They had something. You got to leave it out there and you got to compartmentalize and focus on the task at hand. A couple of things that pop into my mind.
No, absolutely. I think that's a really great point as well. I suppose tennis is sort of particularly like that, isn't it? Just because of the way that it works. Um, talk us, tell us. Sorry, my light was going out then. So you work for a company that's made something like 91 acquisitions in the last few years. How does that? What's that like as someone kind of running talent acquisition? I mean, how's your job changed? What have you kind of learned? What's that experience been like?
Yeah, Matt, that's actually accurate. In the last 6 years, our company has made 91 or so acquisitions. It has kept everyone on our toes. The change element is just so a part of what we do now that change is the norm. I mean, that really is just how we go about, and it's taught us that without extreme and constant open communication, we don't have a chance to survive. We're trying to take all these acquisitions and create one culture, one business culture. And I'm not going to say we didn't have growing pains, but I would say after 91, we're pretty good at it.
And it's funny because talent acquisition is so disruptive and full of change for everyone at the moment. You sort of mentioned communication there. What other aspects do you think are kind of applicable from that kind of disruptive environment that other people could sort of use in the situations that they're facing at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So whether you've made that number of acquisitions or not, I really feel finding the right piece of software, the right processes in place. Whether you're just growing at a fast rate, whether you are looking to find that Six Sigma level of efficiency, to find those processes, to find, the to have the agility to be able to bounce things off different parts of the organization, different acquisitions. We have found that, with the communication, but the processes and, having the right software in place has just been so valuable.
What about the market at the moment? What does the talent market look like? Where are the challenges for you?
How much time do you have? I mean, from Jocelyn speaking about Gen Z. I mean, that's one small segment of the population that could be maybe more different than other. Of course, we've spoken ad nauseum about quiet quitting and resignations and everything else. I find that in my career, this is the most challenging time. And we could go back to the '08 bank crisis. We could go back to '01 with, the stock market implode. I mean, this really is talk about change, the change jobs market. That's really how I would define it. It's changing on a dime, and it is as diverse, as any. And by the way, that's not in the United States. It's not abroad. It's everywhere. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, no,
100%. And it's interesting because we've got these crazy changes and challenges in the talent market, and then at the same time, driving some of the change, but not all of it. AI has arrived to disrupt everything. What do you think the impact of AI is on recruiting, and what does that kind of look like from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. And, I know you're a subject matter expert on that. So hopefully, you don't catch me on anything here. But we have found it to be extremely beneficial for consistency purposes. Just taking a little bit of the manualness away. We're all running around. We get tired. We have distractions. Unfortunately, we're human. So taking away or adding some automation to those processes, even to the offer letter process, to the onboarding process, if we can have a little more automation there, which we do now, in a very efficient way, we have found it to bring us a lot of consistency and yeah, less errors being made.
And do you think the fundamentals of recruiting have changed or are changing, or do you think that they're kind of as they ever were?
I'm around a long time, Matt, and I was around when Blockbuster was going to just stop everyone from going to the movies, and when Monster.com came out, that's it. The job of recruiters is over. We heard, um, and to be honest with you, I don't think that's ever the case. I heard a conversation with you, and maybe a new job coming out is how much will AI be important, or how much should it be used with how much is the human touch? I don't think the human touch will ever be removed 100% from the recruiting process. I think it's essential. I think that us as humans dealing with other humans, hiring potentially other humans is a necessary and always will be a necessary component of the hiring process.
And I suppose there's just kind of relating back to some of the things that we were talking about earlier, because I know you've been sort of listening to the show off stage, as it were. We talked about fake job applications. Is that kind of an issue that you're seeing, or something that's particularly important?
It actually is. We actually we're very vigilant, very, very diligent with our cybersecurity. And I know for a fact we are being contacted by North Korea in a regular manner. They are trying to infiltrate our company. I can't tell you why. I can only imagine the terrible things that maybe they are looking to induce upon us. But they are trying to have interviews. They're trying to get hired. They are, trying to break into our interview process very often. And we have regular trainings, both video, in person, with our cybersecurity team, specifically with people who are either client, candidate, but outside facing. So we found it to be very valuable, and so far or I guess fortunately, we've uncovered some plots.
That's I mean, that's interesting and super scary at the same time. It's 100% 100% a real thing. I just want to ask you a sort of question about culture and brand and all those kind of things, because bringing all of those companies together. What kind of role does recruiting play in creating a culture and kind of building a sort of a shared sense of brand, with the businesses expanding so quickly via acquisitions?
Yeah, Matt, I can't think of a department that's more important. I mean, yes, I'm biased, but we are the very first impression that candidates get about our whole organization, no matter where they live, what company they're going to be working for. So us working with our leadership is very important, that we understand the basics, the ins and the outs, the good, the bad, and the ugly of our organization, and we provide that to our candidates from the beginning, and we look for the hiring managers to then continue it, and then the onboarding team and the training team to keep that message consistent. So our culture, I feel, is extremely unique and very important to us, and it's extremely important in our hiring process, so we hire the right people.
I almost forgot to ask you, actually. I have to ask you because it's been in the show notes. But you kind of mentioned violent execution when you were when you were doing this. Explain what that means.
Yeah, sure. And Matt, talking about our culture, our motto is violent execution. So you can imagine that motto, that culture. It's not for everyone.
Yeah.
I saw a little tag under violent execution. You cannot drive a parked car. You got to get on the highway. Let's go. Let's drive the car. And Matt really, and by the way, in our global headquarters in Chandler, Arizona, we have an entire room devoted to violent execution. And basically, what it means is, yes, of course, we want to be flying a plane or driving a car, but we're going to start out piece by piece. We're going to start out by riding a skateboard. And then while we're riding the skateboard, we're going to turn it into a scooter, and then into a bicycle, and then to a motorcycle. Eventually, we will get it to an automobile, or maybe even a plane upon great success. But that's a little bit of a nugget on violent execution, which gets me really excited. So I'm sorry for shouting.
No, that's fine. Yeah, and so kind of building the plane as it's in motion and all that kind of stuff. Walter, thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
So, apparently, using ChatGPT for work might make you stupid. At least that's what a new MIT study is suggesting. Researchers tracked students over several essay writing sessions, and guess what? The more they leaned on ChatGPT, the less their brains actually worked. Um, the they had EEG scans in this article that showed reduced brain activity, weaker memory, and less engagement when using AI tools compared to Google or just writing on their own. And honestly, the part that really got me was that students who used ChatGPT struggled to remember or even quote from essays that they literally just wrote. They reported feeling zero ownership of their work. And here's the thing, when people switched from ChatGPT back to writing without it, their brains stayed in low power mode. But the reverse, people who went from brain only to using ChatGPT actually lit up more. So, probably because they were combining what they already knew with the tool, not just outsourcing the thinking. Now, I'll be honest, I use AI all the time, and I don't think this means that we should all panic and abandon it like Professor Henry Shevlin was saying in the article and in the study. The real issue is when AI becomes a crutch instead of a tutor, right? There's a difference between using it to level up your work and using it to do the work for you. I've started dedicating one of my content creation days to be a no AI day. So basically, once a week, I write content without any use of AI, no outline, no research, and nothing, just what's in my brain. I wonder if people are going to be able to tell. But using AI for everything is clearly trending. But should it be? Are we teaching people to think less or just think differently? Matt, what do you think? Are we headed towards an AI dependency crisis, or will people figure out the balance?
I've got so much to say. I've got so much to say about this. Both the pros and the pros and the cons, and I'll tell you what. I'll give you a decision about what I really think at the end. Um, uh, Before I start I read an interesting quote during the week that came from I've forgotten his name. The war one of the the kind of the big professors who talks about AI's impact on society. He wasn't talking about this article, but he was talking about other articles that have come out. So there was one where Apple did some research that said LLMs weren't really thinking; they were just pattern matching, and all this sort of stuff. And he kind of just pointed out that there are lots of research papers and articles that kind of get promoted that are quite negative. And is it because people are afraid of what's going to happen, or trying to hold back progress or things like that? And where the other articles, and why don't they get the same kind of spotlight? So I thought I'd start with that. Then I think it's interesting because throughout the whole of human history, we've kind of learnt skills and unlearned skills. So, people always use calculators as an example, and things like that. And the one that came to my mind was calligraphy, the printing press, and how, I don't think anyone could write in those kind of styles anymore because the technology moved on. Also, whenever we've gone through these evolutions, we haven't had the benefit of brain scans because we haven't understood as much about the human brain as we do now. I think in the last 10 years, we've learned more about the human brain than we did in the previous 1,000. So I think it's a kind of we're taking this kind of in isolation and not in the context of history. I think that's the sort of first thing that I would say. However, I do think that there is something in here about how people are using AI, what people are told AI is, and particularly how it's kind of used by students and people at school and all that sort of stuff. Because it's kind of seen as this, it's almost like cheating. It does the work for you. It's like, we'll use it instead. Can we get away with it? Can we do all that kind of stuff? And actually, I think to get the most out of AI, you need a big degree of critical thinking and, putting it to work and all that sort of stuff, and refining and all those kind of things. Because, I have an AI system that is practically part of my team, but I manage it as part of my team. I give it clear instructions, I check its work, I do all that kind of stuff. I understand what it can do that I can't do. Sometimes I forget that, and then, I get rubbish out the other end and all that sort of stuff. So I think that from the education system upwards, we're approaching this in the wrong way. We're seeing it as it's cheating, we're going to ban it, and we're not actually teaching people how to use it properly and how it can really augment your brain and really augment what you what you do. Now, some of that is obviously quite aspirational because not everyone is going to. People will use it to, replace bits of their thinking, and that's kind of inevitable. So, yeah, I'm still very pro AI in all of this. I think that there is a degree of hysteria around this. Also, I'm not a brain scientist, but I'm not sure that measuring students' brains over a very short period of time is a proper way of doing this. But I do take the point that there are core skills that are being lost. And actually, where we should be having more critical thinking, we're probably getting less critical thinking. So there is a problem to fix here, but I don't think it's the problem that a lot of people think it is. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And I agree with you. It's like when I decided to do my like no AI day, it was because I've noticed that I it's becoming harder for me to write than before. And that's just, I love writing. So I don't want it to be harder to do than, I mean, I've been writing since I think my first short story, I was 6. So I could barely write, but I knew I started writing. So it's always been something that's come easy to me. And I've noticed like I'm depending way too much on AI to like tell me what to write about. And that's where I was like, no, I want to decide what I write about type of thing. But I do think people are, we just have to see. We have to wait and see really what's going to happen. It's just probably people were having the same conversation when computers started or when calculators started, right? It's like, yes, I think we will end up finding the balance. I don't think AI is going away. I don't think this is a reason to stop using AI altogether, or for, especially in education, people to not encourage students to use it,
Mhm.
because I mean, it's here, it's very useful. I just think we have to find that balance.
And I think also going back to some of the things that we were talking about earlier in that article about new jobs with AI, talking about taste and discernment, there's just a scenario where if everyone is just using AI for the same thing, and you can be better at using AI than other people, and I think that part of the problem here is that people aren't really taught how to use this properly. And when you look at how software engineers would use it, the type of people who designed it, how they used it compared to how we might use it, kind of very, 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 very different. But ultimately, humans like originality. They like things that stand out and are different from the rest. And I think that, if everyone is just using the same AI to do the same thing, if you do something different out of your unique human brain, then that kind of stands out. So I think it's gonna twist and turn as it kind of happens. And ultimately we can say that the human brain, it may not be as good at doing certain tasks as AI, but it has much more sort of cognitive capacity and all that kind of stuff, and consciousness and all those kind of things, for now anyway. I mean, obviously this,
Yeah.
this might change when AI rules the world, and it gets general intelligence and all that kind of stuff, which might happen never in 100 years or tomorrow.
I think
You
the
just
the
don't know.
human brain is always going to be superior, and we're just going to use it differently.
Mm. And I think the other thing is as well, the human brain has evolved over millions of years. And I think I might have mentioned this before, but there's a brilliant book called, I think it's called Same as Ever, which basically talks about how humans tend to react the same way that they've always reacted, because the kind of the parts of their brain just haven't really evolved. So, I wonder whether there's just a bit about kind of like short-term skill, almost brain muscle that's being lost, rather than the whole brain kind of being restructured and us never being able to do that again. Because writing is a great example. I've written 2 books, and what I found by writing those books was it's a muscle. And if you write every day, you write faster and you write better. And that's what I learned by the end of the first book. And I made a promise to myself that I was going to keep doing that every day. So when I wrote the second book, I'd be on fire, and I didn't. And I got to the second book, and it was really hard. And then I started doing it every day, and my brain kicked back in, and it did it, and I didn't really lose any kind of ability. I just lost the sort of that kind of muscle or whatever it is that's in your brain that does it. So yeah, I mean, it's early days. There's probably some very dangerous things that this technology is doing to our brains, but I think it's probably a little bit early to make some of the judgments that people are making based on little bits of research and anecdotal observations.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely. And how about from a recruitment perspective? So, is gonna are people gonna forget how to recruit if they use ChatGPT all the time? Are they just not going to develop those skills? What do you think
I
from
don't
that?
think you'll forget how to recruit. You might forget how to write a Boolean string or something, right? Just like if you don't do it for a while in general, you will. But I think there's so much to recruiting that ChatGPT can't do,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
as long as you leverage it for the things, we've spoken about this so many times, you leverage it for the things that it can do 100%, but use your human brain for, like, there's just, I hate saying the word gut feeling, but I think enough that I'm not talking about that gut feeling that we don't want
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
recruiting, right?
no, I know what you're saying. Yeah, yeah,
We're talking about like that, just human, that's like,
yeah,
in recruiting.
yeah.
In recruiting, ChatGPT can never
Yeah,
replace that.
absolutely. And there's science about this in terms of your brain spots patterns and it fires off chemicals in your stomach, which is why it's spelled like it's why it's called a gut feeling in the first place. So no, it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if I agree with this. Is it trending, or if I disagree with it, is it ending? What's the definition here?
I think the question around it is, are we is over dependency on AI trending?
Okay.
And or ending, or should it end? And I think it's trending for sure.
Yeah,
I
100%.
think we're moving towards finding a balance.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, trending, probably not going to end, but probably going to change. I think that's probably well, let's be hopeful of that before we
Yes.
all turn into kind of automatron robot zombies. But anyway, fantastic, Rona. Thank you so much for sharing that with us and everything else on the show tonight. That brings us to the end of another episode of the Alder Hour. There are great shows nearly every weekday on the Purple Acorn Network, including the HR Morning Show, My First Job, From the Desk, and From X to Z. If you're interested in the longer form interviews that I do, you can find them on Recruiting Future, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, you can also find the Alder Hour, including this episode and all the other Purple Acorn shows. The Alder Hour will be back this time next Monday. I won't be, certainly not live anyway, because I'm going on holiday. But don't worry, they do a much better job when I'm not here. So the Alder Hour will be back next Monday. I'm looking forward to tuning in and watching it. This is Matt Alder, clocking out.